Championships aren't won on the final shot alone. It all starts with the commitment to stay healthy and on the field for your team. Q-Collar, essential brain protection so athletes can chase greatness.
We have talked about attackmen, midfielders, defense, goalie. Now it's time to talk about the guys in the trenches, the rope unit, the long stick midfielders and the short stick D-middies, Terry Foyt, Dan Kaplan, Kevin Brown. Dan Kaplan, top of the LSM group, who we got?
So I think for me, he is the most instinctual group. You could argue the most instinctual of all of the defenders, regardless of D or LSM. Awesome in the middle of the field, rotates constantly into turnovers, just super high anticipation. And that's John Pike, Rumson, Fairhaven, Mad Dog East. Again, really impressed with him and over the course of the summer in terms of his ability to shine at individual events, his ability to shine in club settings, and again, just like constant menace, puts the ball on the ground, but he doesn't do it in this like overarching, overly aggressive way with these like super heavy or frequent checks. It's just like one really well timed check that he gets, the ball on the ground, and then it's a first time ground ball and he's going the other way. And again, just like super impressed with his volume of work.
The guy who jumped up the page most to me was Jaggers Emerson. Another Jersey guy, was noted on the radar prior to the summer. I watched him at prime time, and then it was really at Crab Feast where his game went to overtime. He lined up on the face-off wing, picked up the ground ball, drew a foul, and then scored the game-winning goal. And it was a representative sequence in terms of his command of the game. And I think that there are elements of his overall game that are similar to the way that you described Pike's in terms of, command for the middle of the field. But one of the things that also stood out to me about Jagger was kind of the latitude that he played with in terms of how difficult he was to run around. This is a weird comparison because Garrett Epple is kind of the consummate close defender, but at the same time, from a posture standpoint and from a way he engaged standpoint, even though it was more commonly at the wing or at the top of the box, I thought Jagger did a really nice job of emulating that type of width and being difficult to run around. So for me, he's one of the higher end LSMs in the class. Kevin?
A lock stick midfielder who really stood out in my eyes was Will Lawrence, Trout from Connecticut, Eclipse, Red Hots guy who, like you mentioned earlier, some attributes that also describe him as well. Just super disruptive. Gets the ball on the ground, and he's always pressuring you from sideline to sideline. You look up, and he's making another play somehow, and it seems like no matter what is asked of him, he's willing to shut the best midfielder coming out of the box down or be a calming presence in the clear and create some transition at times going the other way.
Dan, tell me about Jack Sapiel, Massachusetts Tabor Academy.
Yeah, and again, I think that he's one that, like, as we have some of these conversations, he's on a lot of close defender boards as well. Somebody that can bounce back and forth between either one and be really effective in either spot. He's somebody that I think plays on need. And I think for him specifically, again, can be really disruptive and can get out and have a presence and play hands and, do all of that type of stuff that you talk about, farther from the cage and out in the middle of the field. But also has the ability to just kind of hunker down, play really good position first defense. He's tough, he's strong, he can be great around the cage. And so just like his ability to be a really strong cover defender from a bunch of different spots that has great footwork, but also be a disruptive force in the middle of the field with a great stick, I think allows him to kind of be the type of defender that you feel like you're going to be confident in regardless of matchup or position. And then for me, I feel like the next guy that we have to talk about in terms of LSMs is Ben Waifter from Brother Rice. Plays his club ball with Black Grizzlies and Stealth Lacrosse. So those two things means that he probably hasn't seen as much as a bunch of the guys that are on this list, but he did pop a ton in some of those individual event settings as well. Specifically Showtime, where he was easily one of the most, I would say, players and defenders that kind of shined the most through the weekend in terms of notoriety at the start of it to notoriety at the end of it. And then furthermore, I think people have identified him as one of the most intriguing packages in terms of his athleticism, his ability in the middle of the field, and his cover ability. And so like he's I don't have his specs in front of me, but I would guess that he's like a 6'2", 6'3", probably floating right around 200 pounds, that can also really play you sideline to sideline and move, and is very offensive minded on top of all of that. And so like I think for me, he's right at the top of the list for sure. I think he has a claim to be the best LSM in the class, and is it certainly one of the best defenders in the class. And I think, like I said, it's just going to be one of the really highly sought after talents that right now I think a lot of coaches are kind of thinking might be under the radar, but then come 9-1, his phone's going to be ringing all day.
Jeff, who you like?
Another long stick midi I want to shout out. I think one of you evaluated at best in class drew some high praise for this comparison. Will Donovan, a guy who goes to St. Anthony's and he plays club ball for Shore. Ryan Lasko, he's just an absolute menace out there.
Yeah, I think he is, when it comes to like notoriety and sideline buzz, so to speak, he's one that maybe doesn't have quite as much of that going for him as compared to some of these other guys. But when it comes to just like baseline specs and productivity, is right in that mix and should be for sure. Particularly coming away from underclass, he was the 2027 defensive MVP in that, and again did a really nice job just in the middle of the field. And I think when it comes to his game, a lot of the things that you think about is like he's pretty offensive, he's got a good stick, and is really good in the middle of the field. And everything that I just described is something that you think of, coming in potentially like your skinnier, flashier package, but he does it in like a thicker and is willing to rough you up and play you with physicality way. And so I think he's an offensive minded LSM that can really get it done defensively with some physicality as well.
Any other LSMs we want to touch on, or shall we move to the short six?
I can't go anymore. I got to touch on Will Clowder. Just like phenomenal stick, right? Of the guys right there on that list. I think for me, the way that he popped was just like off of wings. It feels like every wing that he took all summer, he ended up with the ground ball out of it. Just like has that knack, has a great stick, and has that anticipation for where that ball's going to pop out.
All right, on the short six.
All right, I'll kick things off. I think that, I think this is a position certainly in which you're going to get a varying opinion, because again, it's, what do you value? Do you value the kid that's going to be the most physical and most confrontational? Or do you value, somebody that's going to go about things in like a more savvy way, that's great on ground balls and super trustworthy in the clear, that potentially you can just leave out there on offense as well? And so I think from that perspective, like what does the top end look like is a little bit of a beauty in the eye of the beholder aspect. For me, I really love Micah Morozov, who doesn't do as much of the offensive end of things that I think, that position, you can differentiate yourself within. But from his perspective, it's like speed, matchup ability, cover ability, wings of ground balls, and a willingness to, self-clear when that's the task ahead of him. So I think he checks a lot of those boxes, and plays his spring ball for Coward Hall, where he's tested a ton, and obviously is put into some difficult situations and asked to play in some high pedigree games. And so from that perspective as well, you would expect that like the transition would work pretty seamlessly from the high school to college level.
In terms of overall defense, a guy I've seen quite a bit make plays all over the field, wings of face-offs, is Brady Burke. From Mad Dog. He has great timing on his jams when Dodgers are trying to either split past him and he's pushed him towards the sideline and down the alley. And he's also great at just totally wrecking plays in the first place before they can get set up, and causing some turnovers the top of the key or on a crease collapse or what have you. Punt return, clear type of midfielder. That's the type of athlete he is, and I think he translates to the next level in terms of being just a well-rounded lacrosse player, not just a D-mid.
Dan, we've already seen two Army commits, one in Fort Siegfried and another in Daniel Guinea. What do the Black Knights have coming in?
Yeah, I think Guinea has some offensive ability as well. Certainly, is it particularly compared to Ford, who kind of represents your true like short stick D mid and fits that caliber of just like tough, eager to get physical, wants to be confrontational, has a presence, wants to crowd dodgers, all of those aspects of things. And then Guinea, I think, gets it done in a variety of ways. I think some people may classify him in a different spot, and that's again, you could make that argument just because he is pretty skilled, right? And so on top of his ability to just like impact the game defensively, he's a guy that's going to impact the game in a variety of facets.
Do you have anybody else you want to mention?
Well, a guy, when you provide that description, that comes to my mind that I know you're high on, Terry, is Quincy Quillard. 3D New England, just a freak of nature. When you see him clearing the ball, he can just barrel over attackers who get in his way. Anything that stands out when you hear that name?
Yeah, well, the thing about him that's so interesting is like he's pretty tall, which I think oftentimes, you don't associate short stick D-middies with being tall because you need that side to side kind of quickness that does usually corresponds to having a low center of gravity. And so I think strength is the part of the game that you need to emphasize there. But I also think that, to Dan's point, I saw him make plays offensively, and so as a result, sometimes the most important thing about a D-midi comes down to mentality. How willing are you to accept the role that is given to you? And, we spent 20 minutes talking about middies earlier. There are going to be a lot of those guys who their opportunity to get on the field early in their career is going to be through the defensive end. And whether or not they are successful enough to stay in terms of getting on the field is going to come down to their mentality. And so I think Quillard falls in the category of like, is he going to want to be deployed in that capacity, or does he think he's an offensive player?
He certainly has the athleticism to do both. Last guy I'll mention for the D mids, the nameless positions of these.
Nick Casal is going to be so disappointed in this segment.
And then we're going to call them nameless and then name names.
Yes, too many names for the nameless position of lacrosse, but we got to mention the MVP of the 27th division for the National All-Star Games. Shout out to Mateo Ranigan out of the DMV region. He does all the little things and backs the game, especially in the middle of the field, off the ground, on the wings of faceoffs, and is just a real great team defender.
Totally. I'll hit a couple other names, and I'll classify it as this. Guys I would not want to be cross-checked by. Joe Egan from Leading Edge, one of the guys that I think when it comes to, like, again, playing physical defense and having the footwork and trust in himself to be able to get out, have a presence, and then maintain cover, Joe Egan definitely fits that description. Emerson Nappy out of Choate, I think also is right in that category of things as well. Super high impact player. And then Jaden Mayorio out of Sweet Lax, again, another player that, I just would not want to line up and dodge against myself, just knowing that it's going to end up in, him playing some really physical defense and probably deterring me from getting where I want to go.
Last guy I'll say is just in terms of open field speed. I don't think I saw anyone faster than Jordan Carrasquillo. His ability to get it from defense to offense in snap of a finger was really impressive.
I'll add to him and just say that with his skill set in particular, his size, right, it really pops, right? He has more size going for him at like a 6 foot plus, 185 pound plus, type of body profile and frame, right? And so from his ability to match up and, not give up any size, I think it is meaningful as well. And the last guy I'll touch on that is also in that category of things, a 6 foot plus, really strong, heavy, just like an impressive athlete is Grant Van Wyck from Colorado, Cherry Creek, and does a bit with Mad Dog, does a bit with Colorado Kings, one of those guys, and again, really impressed with him over the course of his samples.